Are we live yet? See, StreamYard needs to get this fixed. Why should the host, the one that's kind of producing, be the last one to know that we're live? By the way, I'm Brent Leary.
And I agree with you completely. And yeah, I'm Paul Greenberg.
And yeah, matter of fact, we are the CRM players. And, we might be a little punchy today because, quite honestly, I didn't get back home from Denver until like 2 o'clock this morning. So.
Yeah, luckily I got in early, 11:45.
Yeah, you got an extra an hour and 45 minutes there?
Yeah. I saw from the picture you sent me that you were clearly being routed around storms.
Oh.
Well, on the way out, that Minnesota plane. Well, on the way out, we were routed around those storms.
Yeah, well, we went to like California from Minnesota to Denver. Amidst the storms, it felt like we went on a tour of all the western states. But anyway, and then if that wasn't bad enough, when we landed, they couldn't open the door. So it took like 15.
You're kidding.
Wait a minute. Why am I yelling? I gotta take it down a notch here.
You have to use geek terms. You're coming in too hot.
Oh God. All right. Anyway, we are the CRM players, and wait a minute. Can we do our moment of yes, we can. And now we haven't done this in so long, I almost forgot. But now it's the moment of Sven.
Salvete amici. I would say Latin.
I would say Latin. Is that like Don Amici's nephew Sal?
Yeah, Sal Amici. Oh, that really, yeah, but I do think it's Latin.
I was gonna see that or
Rebecca.
Yeah, I'm going with Vinny Vici Amici.
Vinny Vidi Vici.
Yeah, that. All right, we're in agreement. It's Latin. Sven, let us know. Are we right or are we wrong? It would be nice to be right again, Well,
we're right more than not.
Well, you're right more than not.
Well, we are a team, so it's we.
All right. I'll take any kind of win I can get at this point. Yeah. All right, so this is cool. So we are just back from Denver, where we were at Pros Outperform. I'm gonna definitely ask your thoughts on that. And by the way, we were right.
Thank you, Sven. And Sven, it's good to see you back, and it's good to have the moment of Sven back, and that means the universe is realigned and back in order.
And that is this week's Moment of Sven, brought to you by, no one at the moment, but
yeah, maybe somebody.
Oh, and look at that. You are always right. Oh, that's kind of nice. All right. So just getting back from Pros Outperform.
Yeah.
And a lot of cool things that happened. That's one of the better conferences of the year so far.
Yeah, agree with
you. And we have a couple of things to say about that. But we do have a great guest, a first-time guest.
I know, which makes it seems weird because we've known her so long.
Well, I had her on a few good minutes. I think that was last year.
Okay.
But after being at Oracle Media Day, at our Analyst Media Day, or I don't know, we'll get the right name of that. Hopefully. But what was great, our next guest and a person who has been on the show, Rob Pinkerton, they did a tag team talking about CX and Oracle's approach to CX. And they did it in such a unique and fun way. I wanted to have her on it and have her talk about it with you, because you weren't at Oracle Media Analyst Summit.
No, was literally in the middle of cruising.
Yeah, you were cruising. But, actually, you were cruising, and they actually brought up something in the water about jumping a shark. We're going to let her explain that. It's a little fun. So anyway, matter of fact, I'm going to go a little different today, because I'm just really proud of myself, because I do believe this is the best promo picture that I put together. I mean, first of all,
man,
give her credit. That is just the perfect picture, like headshot.
Period. Yeah.
Because you know why? Because sometimes when I do this stuff, people's shoulders get cut off, because they're in a weird, awkward position. Look, hers is just like, it's perfectly.
I know.
set, it just made my job so easy, so I wanted to show that off. So you know who our guest is, but you meaning the Venerable Paul Greenberg will still have to do the traditional introduction, but I just wanted to put that out there. That's just all right. So we have something big coming up tomorrow, actually. You know what that is, right?
Yeah.
You know who's back, right?
Yes, he is. And he's got a couple of topics that I guarantee will stir things up. One, he told me so I can tell you the topics. First topic is going to be the back to work stuff. He wants to go through that. And the second one, and this is his exact phrasing of it, is the AI hype.
What do you mean? There's hype in AI? Really?
Well, AI, it's probably AI generated hype.
Well,
the AI is generating its own hype at this point.
You know what else is getting hyped up tremendously? It's the CRM Playaz Las Vegas residency. What about that?
They should just give us like the presidential suites and golden tickets and free meals at Michelin starred restaurants and things like that, and limos.
Can you get a hamburger at a Michelin restaurant, by the way? Can you get a good hamburger?
Yeah, you can, but the thing is, it's probably a truffle burger, so you'd have to tell them, give me the truffle burger, hold the truffles.
Hold the truffles, right? Just give me the burger.
And you can hold them any way you want and anywhere you want.
So that's coming up in like 3 weeks, right?
Yeah, 18 days, I think.
Pega. First, we're going to Pega at the MGM, and we're going to do a live Playaz show with a couple of guests there. Guests to be named, I guess. We're still waiting.
Actually, more than a couple, if you think about it. This is going to be a little more rapid fire than we typically do. You'll see when it happens.
Yeah, we'll let you know when we know the exact time we're going to be streaming and who's going to be joining us. But that's the first part of the week, and then if that weren't enough, we're going to Variant Engage to the Bellagio.
And there we're not going to. I won't say exactly what it is, but we're doing something literally entirely different. Right? It's just totally different than what we're doing at Pega. 100%.
Okay. Really? I didn't even know that. Wow. Okay.
Think about it. Think about what it is.
All right. Well, I'll think about it after the show.
Okay.
Because I don't want to take too much time away from that. All right. So I think those are the announcements. So why don't we because we got to bring back one, something that is extremely popular. Quick thoughts, just a few quick thoughts on this week at Outperform.
First, what Pros is up to. Look, I love Pros. So let's say, as much as we wanted to talk about no biases, I have biases, and one of them is I love that company, and I have for 8 years basically. That said, I've never had a problem being critical when I need to. And that said, Pros is arguably in the best position A, they've ever been in, and B, most any company is in, because they have been look, 8 years ago, they had the best AI platform I've ever seen. They could, as Greg Kahn called it, he called it an applied AI platform. And he's right. They could take what they do, which is pricing optimization, CPQ, etc., and do anything with it from predictive to prescriptive. And then now they're mapping all that to Gen AI. And honestly, with the depth of the platform and the brilliance of their engineers, they can create anything from that platform. So they have things that are tying into via CPQ to collaborative selling, for example, right? I mean, it was extraordinary. That's one thing. The second thing, and I'll just leave it at this, is the presentations. There were a couple of, a couple of hashtag fails, but Michael Wu, who many of you know, and hopefully you saw him yesterday with us, did a brilliant presentation on what is AI really, and especially what is generative AI. And he broke it down in a way that an ordinary human being can understand it. And then they had she's a scientist at Stanford.
Dr. Poppy Crum.
And she did something more on the behavioral, kind of the right brain of the whole thing, more on the behavioral side and the human signals and cues and things along and behavior that ties to all of this. And it was brilliant. I mean, the educational value of that conference was arguably the best, not just of this year, but of the last several. And it was a much smaller conference than most of the big ones.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna give my thoughts. I'm gonna play a short, relatively short clip because it was the first time we had a chance to talk to our buddy Michael Wu, and face to face for like 4 or 5 years. And anybody who knows anything about AI knows he's one of the leading voices. That was before all this stuff happened. So
he's a rock star.
He's exactly. So we had a great, full conversation with him. There is one clip I wanted to play about him breaking down how hallucination is actually a feature of a generative AI and how he thinks we can get away from it, because some things you just don't want hallucinations. When you're dealing, you want facts, not hallucinations. So this is Dr. Michael Wu on that.
It's a built-in feature for generative AI. In fact, the generative nature of generative AI is hallucinative, right? I mean, so it's just that when there is data, right, they are going to generate something that's similar, right? But when there's no data, right, it can still generate. I mean, it's very low probability because data, there's no, think about the Gaussian distribution I talk about, right? The Gaussian distribution is never zero anywhere, right? So everything is possible. If you look at the empirical data, there are some places where there's no data. So if you sample from the true Gaussian, right, every possible number is possible from negative infinity to infinity. It's not very likely, but it's possible. So that's the underlying secret sauce of all generative AI. It's the non-zero probability of generating something that it had never seen before in the data. In the data is zero probability, but it's in the real distribution that you sample from, that you generate from, it's non-zero probability. It's possible. Then because of that, it make up stuff, right, that never existed before. So that's why it hallucinates. So by construction, it will hallucinate. So how do you get around that? One obvious way is to kind of, you set all the zero probability region to zero, right? But then you don't have a generative AI anymore, right? The whole point of generative AI is to generate stuff that was never existed, right? But I talk about whether it's a bug or a feature, right? So for design or creative applications, is definitely a huge feature, right? But for fact-based application, we need other additional technology around it to put guardrails around it. The guardrails is usually, the example that I give is plain old Bing search as the heavy lifting information retrieval engine. Basically, if you query for something, you type in a term and you query for something. If it finds it, right, and it's going to take what it finds and then, give it to ChatGPT and have it summarized so it can actually tell you what it is. But if it didn't find anything, then you should just not give it to ChatGPT and just tell you that it didn't find anything, right? So that's just what we call retrieval augmented generation. Right, so RAG, using information retrieval to do the heavy lifting to find the information. Right, if it didn't find it, then that means it doesn't exist. Right, then you should tell you that it didn't exist and not give it to ChatGPT, because if you give it to ChatGPT, then it's going to make up stuff. Right. So,
and if you remember, he showed an example in his presentation.
Yeah.
What was it? Mundo. What was the name of the company?
It was one of their products. Every Mundo or something like that.
It was an acquisition they had made, right. And he showed a list of products that ChatGPT showed of Mundo Everywhere or whatever it was called.
Something like that. Yeah.
And the top 4 were real products, and the bottom 4, which were described as well as the top 4 with names and descriptions, were completely made up by ChatGPT.
Completely.
Look completely legit too.
And that's where the feature of hallucination, when you wanted to create images from your words, the images that may never have existed, that's what it's supposed to do. But we don't want it making up facts when we ask for certain things like, what's the product line for this? So I love how he kind of broke it down and how he's looking at it as what he call retrieval augmented generation, which I think is really fascinating. Anyway, lots more of that. We had a full hour and a half with not only Michael Wu, but also Grad Khan. I still say might be the coolest name in the industry right now, who is the CMO of Pros. And we even have one of their customers on. what do you remember how his
Yin Zhang, Xinji Zhang.
Yeah, right. From what was Lasership, but they just got acquired and merged or something. So there's actually a new name, but we knew it as Lasership.
I think it was they were acquired by On Track.
Yeah, I think that's it. But they still technically, I guess we were able to still call them Lasership.
Right. They're still merging.
Check out those shows from yesterday. Lots of really good stuff. And if you want to know anything about AI, or generative AI, predictive AI, prescriptive AI, just listen to that conversation with Michael Will. That was great.
The shows will be up after Playaz is over, today's player. The shows will be up on both the website and on YouTube on our PPN channel.
Yep. All right. Before we get to our guests, we have to do the thing that is just taking hold over the nation, almost sort of like generative AI, actually. And this is really cool because we have a new way to introduce this segment. Check this out. Stump the God. I got to get a voiceover. Maybe we'll get Anand to do that.
Yep.
With Stump the Godfather, and it is brought to you by my Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot. Yes, AI is actually bringing you Stump the Godfather. I just love saying that.
Yeah. And now it gives me the reason. Now I get a question and then I can hallucinate.
So, yeah, that's a good one. So I was looking over this new white paper, I guess, or report Microsoft called Governing AI, a Blueprint for the Future. Interesting report. But one thing really stood out to me, and I want to bring this up. So they had this included in this document. Technology drives GDP growth and the pace of change is accelerating. So when technology gets introduced, what impact does it have on GDP? And as you can see from this image, there wasn't a whole lot going on back in the 1800s, except for, I guess, Gutenberg with the printing press in the 1400s. And you saw there wasn't a whole lot of GDP activity generated from the printing press back in the day. But as you step through, millennia, or I guess century upon century, you can see all these new technological developments and how GDP growth multiplier was growing at an accelerated rate as we move through time and as new technologies were getting introduced. But as you can see, it goes from 1x in the 15 and 1600s to 2x in the 17 to 1800s to 4x in the 18 and 1900s. And then where did it go from there? And that is the question for the Venerable Paul Greenberg. What is the global GDP growth multiplier in the 2000s, given all that has taken place within the last couple of years, particularly what's going on with AI? So your guess.
All right. So this is tricky. I'll tell you why. So one of the things I was taught to look at years ago by my intellectual mentor, Karl Marx, back in the day, was to look at the, well, no, Groucho was my other intellectual mentor, was the rate of growth. Now, if you look at the growth, you see 0.4 to 1 to 2 to 4. It looks like, wow, that's amazing. But actually, the greatest rate of growth was between 1100 and 1550, or 1000. Well, I guess between 1250 and 1550, because that's more. The other rates, one was no actual rate of growth between 15 and 1600, and then it was double, and then it was double again. But the actual greatest rate of the rate was the 1250 to 1550, which says something. So my question is, how this? Well, that's actually a thing.
You got to answer. You can't give a question.
No.
What is your answer?
Well, no. The answer comes based on what I have to think about myself. Is this an exponential leap, or is it just a continuation of a pretty good growth multiplier? So the meaning, is it going to go to 8, so to speak, or is it going to go to 32, so to speak? That's the tricky part here. Now, I'm guessing Microsoft's study shows something modestly spectacular. And so this is just a guess. Of course, it's a hallucination, right? I'm having it right now. I've dropped all the necessary drugs I need to do this, right? So I'm guessing 16.
16.
I'm going to 4x here as the rate of the rate.
Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
I
have no real clue, and there's no real science behind what I said, other than I'm pointing out facts of.
16 is a good guess. I think it's a good one. You know.
Well, you know the answer, so I don't.
Yeah. All right. So 16 is your guess. I think it's a good guess coming out of, you're just pulling it out of the air, basically, right? I mean, you did a little logic. There's some logic in there.
I mean, so, it depends on how exponential the thing is, really. I'm assuming they want to show this, since they're an AI company, they want to show this is the greatest leap in history.
All right, so here it is. The answer is
20.
You weren't that far off.
No. Well, I was. That's literally one unit off, not 4. 1 unit off.
Yeah, so there's a 5x growth between
instead of a 4x growth.
Right. All right. So that was close. You were in the ballpark.
My science was right. My guess was off.
Oh, okay. I give you credit because I think it was a kind of a hard one. So.
Oh, it's definitely hard, but I mean, I don't feel like I got it wrong. It's hard because that's also speculative completely on their part. There's no science in that yet. It's this way too short a time.
Well, anyway, that was this week's. Let me do this. That was this week's Stump the Godfather, not Stump. Stump the Godfather.
Stump. Thank you.
Brought to you by Microsoft Dynamics 365 Copilot. And what would we do without AI? We wouldn't even have a sponsor.
Well, actually, we have 2 other ones coming, but we have 3 sponsors right now, and then a lot of people who seem Pega and Ferrant, people like that, who want us to, show up and do stuff.
All right, so, we'll whatever people want us to show up and do stuff, we're there. But in the meantime, now it's time for the official introduction of our guest. I turned it over to the venerable Paul Greenberg.
Well, we sort of lost a little bit of the excitement and anticipation because you already saw Katrina's name. So, but I will tell you this. It's surprising in one way, but not surprising in another, that she hasn't been on the show, because she is a brilliant person. She is somebody who, if you'll note in her title, it said product strategy and marketing. Product management rather, and marketing. Those are 2 entirely different disciplines. And she does both exceptionally well. She's one of the key linchpins to the success of Oracle CX. She also is with all the analysts. She's one of the people who is most often presenting to us, explaining to us, helping us figure out what's going on at Oracle CX. She's put forward by Oracle themselves as a person who they are happy to have as a spokesperson for them. And with all of that amazing activity, behavior, history, experience, she's actually understated. She's an understated person. She's not like the kind of person who's going to be in your face or out there with being gigantic about things. But what she always is impressive, right? No matter what. So I think she's amazing, and I know you do. And we've known her a long time, and we've seen her a lot behind the scenes, right? Now it's time for those of you who haven't seen her behind the scenes to see her.
How could they see her behind the scenes?
Right, that's what I'm saying. Those of you who haven't. Well, we have.
Well, I guess you got to
think about it. Those analyst briefings are always behind the scenes, right? None of them are public.
By the way, it's time. The official name, as she gave it to us, is the Oracle Applications and Industry Analyst Summit. That was the
thing I wasn't at.
The thing that you were at cruising. That you could.
That's right.
But she's here right now, so
let's just bring her on.
There she is.
There she is. Welcome.
Hi guys, how are you? What an introduction! Wow.
All true.
And look at that. You got a very nice setup there. It looks very colorful and this green. Yes.
Cool lamp.
I'm sure my colleagues wonder when the jungle is going to take over.
I actually really love that lamp.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool Art Deco-y.
Yeah, exactly.
How are you guys? Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
Well, we've been wanting to have you on since right after the Oracle Applications and Industry Analyst Summit. I want to make sure I get it right now.
Quite the name. Yeah, our Analyst Summit.
Yeah.
Short, yeah.
So because you and Rob did such a really great job with your session on CX, Oracle CX, particularly. I mean, look, I came of age in the 80s. So you start talking, it's the 70s and the 80s. So you start talking about Happy Days and Dallas and things like that. I mean, you had me. But you know, maybe you could talk a little bit about, you know, because Paul wasn't there. Maybe you could talk to Paul about kind of what you guys laid out and how you laid it out with the whole portion of the Oracle CX during that whole event.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, you know, we continued actually the 80s theme with our latest planning session, the Karate Kid. So I'll tell you about that next time.
Nice.
But,
wax on,
yeah,
wax.
You know,
Cobra
we exactly Cobra Kai SWAT team. What we really wanted to do was kind of provoke some new thinking about CRM and talk about it in an engaging way, because everybody wanted to know, you know, Oracle is all about this vertical integration fusion strategy, but you know, talking about that for 45 minutes, you know, could be potentially a little dry. So we tried to liven things up a little bit by taking some 1970s, 1980s kind of familiar frameworks, like jumping the shark, you know, doing big new serial programming, and make it an interesting conversation. So the premise really was, you know, CRM has jumped the shark, meaning that, you know, a lot of us, you know, have started becoming a lot more about entertainment and big news headlines than actually some substantive movement in the industry around customer value and you know, really moving the industry forward rather than just heading for those headlines in the news. So that's kind of what we based the presentation on, was, you know, the idea that we've become a bit like a self-licking ice cream cone in the industry in some places. And, you know, Oracle really wants to focus and double down on kind of delivering revenue and customer value through our products that are kind of leveraging all the power and innovation that Oracle is bringing to the market. So,
how can you elaborate on the jumping the shark thing? I mean, given I know the history, Fonzie jumping the shark, but can you elaborate on what you meant by that a bit?
Yeah. So, you know, it was really, you know, so Fonzie back in the 1970s, star of Happy Days, he was the epitome of cool, right? He always showed up in that leather jacket, kind of had that swagger to him. But sadly, in the 5th season of Happy Days, he took a bet on a California vacation with his family, put on that leather jacket, strapped on some water skis, and jumped over a shark on a dare. And it kind of marked the decline of Happy Days. You know, it marked the point where the plot of the show became a little ridiculous and desperate for audience attention because it had failed to evolve. And we were kind of using that as the, you know, CRM was the original cool, right? It used to be the move to the cloud. Everything was in the cloud. And then at some point, things changed. You know, we started entertaining our customers a lot more rather than actually providing you know, value and substance to them through the technology and the customer value that we delivered. And, you know, we really think it's time for a new cool. You know, what's the next cool after jumping the shark? Can you, okay, Paul, maybe you know what the next cool show was after Happy Days. Let's make him guess, Brent. See if he can get it.
Okay. Sorry, I'm sorry. Oracle's not a sponsor. I'm not guessing.
Right. No work. Not going to do any work for us.
Oh, you know the show too. You actually.
Oh, I'm sure I could guess it if I thought about it.
It's the moment of the show.
The moment of the show. Wait. I know the show. I know. Obviously, I know when Happy Days and Jumping Shark. I know that. I mean, I've known that since they coined the term. right? I actually wrote a
Let me give
paper
you,
on it
let me give you a hint.
years
I'm
ago.
going to give him a hint, Katrina. It's
Good,
three
good.
words. There's 3 words that made this, and it was a cliffhanger. 3 words that carried over until the next season of the show.
Who shot JR?
There it is. You got
There you go.
You
Yeah.
got
So yeah.
As
And
soon as you
why
said 3
was it-
words, I knew. Thank you.
Yeah,
That was
it
the
really
key.
it really marked the new cool for TV that still continues today, right? Everybody binge watches series. It was the first show in the 80s that really had this idea of a 14 series story, continuous storyline about the Ewing family, which really brought the new cool to TV, which was scale, right? They did everything big. The storylines were big. They conquered the American West. They herded cattle. They created a vertically integrated enterprise that went from shipping to real estate to construction to banking, right? So we went from this period in time where everything was siloed and episodic, to a period of time where things were delivered in a continuum around one customer, one family story in a very integrated way. So we kind of use that as the premise to say, we need to move from these kind of siloed approaches to, every product being, an island in an archipelago, to actually a vertically integrated, continuous storyline that puts customer value at the center.
So, look, I ultimately agree with you that CRM jumped the shark. I'll have a different take on how that happened, but I'm kind of curious as to how you, at the same time, by the time it did, and actually probably one of the problems too was it became operationally well defined, right? And it was really well defined. I mean, at a certain point, and that's actually my take on it, to be honest, it went from what originally when all of us back in the day were hoping was going to be a big deal, really, business strategy, even philosophy and outlook, and it became operational technology. And when somebody says CRM now, they usually stick the word A in front of it, and it's a system, and that's all it is. Mm-hmm. Which is fine. I mean, it's still an important system, and people pretty much went back then from the bigger picture on strategy and looking at it now, because now what we used to think was CRM strategy is really now what we're all calling CX strategy or engagement strategy or things like that. So my question is, okay, so you had that big picture thing going on and it was exciting and really, and then it kind of matured into a relatively, let me rephrase it, a very necessary but relatively boring requirement for business, which was, okay, we need operationally to run systems with this. How do you, what in the world is the next big cool thing realistically, not just generally, but what does it do, or how does it work, or what's the thinking around it?
Yeah, so we really tied everything to scale, and it gets back to this AI conversation, right? Because to deliver on the requirements that companies want today, which is to deliver at CX at scale, right? That's the ultimate point of a CRM system, is to deliver personalized, precise experiences, multiple devices, every touch point, every region, lots of different languages, not just to customers, but to employees in real time, every time, all the time, right? That's a lot of requirements around data. And if you're taking this artisanal, hand created approach where everybody in sales is doing one thing, everybody in marketing is doing another thing, everybody in service is doing another thing, you're not really tying that customer journey together. And then in the meantime, you've got all this data floating around everybody's a CIO of their own little sphere of influence in the company. And, we really think that bringing all of that together, that data together, is really not something you can do at human scale. It has to happen at computer scale. And so this is, why we tried to make the presentation a little more interesting, because, talking about vertical integration and computer scale isn't really, sometimes the most interesting way of presenting things. But, when you think about back to that Microsoft chart you showed just before I joined, when you think of each kind of big growth curve, it happened, a lot of the big technology innovations happening when big players in the industry decide that they have to vertically integrate. So go back to the early 20th century and Ford. They were one of the first companies that integrated everything vertically. I mean, they mined the metals themselves. They trucked the metals to their manufacturers. They forged the metal. They did everything from mining the metal to forging the metal to actually building the cars on the assembly line, assembling. Eventually, they had a more distributed model when more people were manufacturing cars. But if you jump forward to the next big vertically integrated companies that we can think of, like Apple and Tesla, they own the whole production chain, right? Like Tesla owns everything. You don't have to go to the gas station. The sales process is part of the car itself, right? They just upsell you on the screen. You don't have to actually go to a dealership to turn on new features. They just download every night and you just click, okay, I'll buy that, So they own everything. And on top of that, they're taking all the data they collect from the drivers to the streets, and they're putting that back into the product. So they own everything from top to bottom. And so, in a long way of saying, that's kind of the approach we're taking to our entire technology stack, is everything from the bare metal all the way up to the applications that we develop is a vertically integrated cloud stack. And it's geared towards data collection all the way up and down the stack, which enables us to really natively power all sorts of AI up and down, from the autonomous database up through our employee experiences that suggest next best action, leveraging all the data all the way up and down the entire stack. So it's a really long way of getting to an answer, but I think that's the next big thing in enterprise software. I think is riding that hockey stick up in vertical integration, because that's really where AI can sing when you have all of that data in one place.
Yeah, it almost feels like having, it's not just it's having the data, but it's the data coming from all these different areas of the business.
Exactly.
And, yeah, being able to aggregate it all, bring it together, and then have the computing power to do all the AI that you want, in order not just to, I guess, come up with facts or predictions or whatever it is, but actually now we're generating stuff. We're actually creating things, or maybe even better next best actions or better experiences. But I see what you thought about, because it's just having one of those things, having data or having the compute power. If you don't have them all, you can't really get to, I think, where you're looking to go, right?
Yeah, it's the first step is having all that data, Brent, just what you're saying, all in one place. Because in order to have really complex enterprise, even large language models at immense scale, you can't have that data jumping from cloud to cloud to cloud to cloud. You need to have it all in one place and secured so that you can run all these models on it in real time. But if you're moving that data from a bunch of different places to get it into one place before you even run those models, it starts to break down. You can't actually use it in a way that is powerful enough to generate the outcomes you want for customers, for employees, and to leverage those models in a significant way.
How do you, I mean, that's, if you think about that, that's kind of a, what you describe is kind of the architecture of it all, I guess. But the question is, how do you tell the world about that exactly? I mean, look, there are going to be people, and it kind of goes to your original point of maybe too much. I mean, I'm a great believer in entertainment, actually, but at the same time, sometimes it does get entertainment. It never trumps value. It should, I mean, entertainment's more for emotional purposes, you know. But the question then becomes, how do you explain that to somebody who's just a person who isn't necessarily interested in the architecture? They're interested in the outcomes. They're interested in, or they're simply interested in understanding it. If you noted what we were talking about earlier, Michael Wu's power, among other than the fact he happens to be a genius as an AI scientist itself, Michael Wu's actual power is ability to explain things to people in a way that they get it, and they always do. The thing with Michael, I've known him since he's in his 20s, and his late 20s, and he's in his 50s now, right? So he's always had that.
Put that out there? Was that public?
Yeah, yes, it's public. That's right. You have to, when you're 73, you either embrace your age or you're in trouble, right? So, the question is, how do you put that out there to people who aren't interested per se in the architecture, although they're glad it's there, but they just want to know even just how to understand it and what it's going to do for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you do it through customer stories. I think actually, Larry Ellison described it well in the last earnings call when he started talking about, you know, how much AI is driving up demand for cloud services because of the immense amount of computing power you need to do things like what we're doing for MD Anderson, for example. You know, taking the Cerner health records, you know, and running AI models through it so that clinicians can make better recommendations that reduce readmissions for cancer patients, right? You tell it through powerful stories like that. You tell it through stories like Oracle using its own AI to close books faster because we can run models over the entire set of enterprise data, all the way from financials up through sales and opportunity management. You know, we tell it through marketing stories, like being able to deliver new content that's interesting to customers, or new process flows for marketers by having AI sit on top of and watch how employees are using technology and suggesting new skills or new flows that make their jobs easier and suggest recommendations on what to do next with customers. So ultimately, you know, you can talk about the architecture all the way, you know, to the end of the day, but I think customer stories and use cases that are really powerful is the best way to bring that to life. Yeah.
Matter of fact, yesterday at Pros, we talked to one of their customers. One of the things that, as he was talking about, you know, some of the things that they're using the platform, and one of it was just to be able to be able to be the first one to respond to a quote that a customer has, and having all the information and the ability, the automation, and able to do it quicker, because in certain instances, the quickness to being the first to quote could put you at a really serious competitive advantage. I hadn't really thought about it like that, but you know, as you said, this is a customer who's living it and totally immersed in it, talking about, oh man, having a platform that allows us to quickly be the first to quote. That could be a pretty significant advantage. So
I would say not even first to quote, but like the best quote for the customer and for the business and for the sales rep, right? So you can actually run AI models on top of all historical data you have in your business systems and say, in this industry, for this type of customer, buying this set of products, you could quote it this way, sales rep, but ultimately you're going to more likely to close the deal, take a little less commission, and the business can recommend things that is better margin for the business, right? So it's not just first to quote, but like the best quote for the business customer and the sales rep.
Actually, that actually was what we were discussing. If you watch the segment, we literally were talking exactly about that.
Yeah, because his idea was, we want to know how much money are we leaving on the table by putting a particular particular customer. So it all kind of builds on each other, right? I mean, it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, or driving new behaviors in your sales team, right? Sometimes when you're introducing new products or new services, sales reps will just sell what they know, but how do you incentivize them through intelligent recommendations and give them the option to actually see that this new product will actually be better for me and for the business and for the customer? So it's
the other thing
really amazing stuff.
Yeah. The other thing I think that he mentioned was, because we brought the question up, you get first with your price, but somebody comes in and undercuts you, one of the things he gave a longer explanation of the factors that would go into then looking at that. But he also said one of the things he loved about pros, which made it interesting, it kind of goes to what you're saying directly, is using those models, he can come back really quickly with a second number if he needs to, or a reason why his quote is more, what they're providing is more valuable than what the undercutter is.
And that gets kind of back to this human scale versus computer scale. Like there's no way a sales rep in the moment can possibly go through all the permutations that are required to come up with that right offer, right? Or that quote, or that proposal. That takes massive computing power, right? And that's why that architecture is so important to deliver on that specific use case. Is and it's not necessarily, everybody talks about AI, taking white collar jobs, and I think used in the right way, AI can actually help people do their jobs better and much more in a more powerful way that makes them feel better and also delivers better customer value, because you can do these optimized things that would take a human. They could eventually do it, but it would just take a much longer period of time.
So we have a question from one of our faves, the guy that does the moment of Sven for us, Sven. And he says, if we are dealing with data that requires trust from our customer, with AI, this is getting more and more important. How will regulations for AI look? And how will AI look like in a decentralized Web3? Ooh. I haven't heard that term Web3 in a while, because all we hear about is general, all the AI stuff. So your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'll address what the question maybe in a different way, which is data security. I think it's what it's ultimately getting to is, there were a lot of stories in the headlines recently, like about Samsung engineers using ChatGPT and put proprietary code out into the OpenAI system, or AI generating strange articles around healthcare or giving bad financial advice, suggesting that you could make 100% return on a year on a 3% investment, right? So things like that. But the point being, like, I think for enterprise scenarios in particular, you need to be really careful about like putting guardrails and on the data. Like what do you actually want to take in from the web and offer to your employees? You want to make sure it's correct and you want to make sure it's secure, but you also want to make sure your employees aren't accidentally releasing information about customers or leaking information about proprietary information out into the OpenAI system. So you know, I think, you know, if you're writing a school essay or whatever, you're taking the risk that there might be some inaccurate information in there, or might hallucinate somewhere. But I think in enterprise scenarios, you need to be much more careful because you're dealing with not only company proprietary data, customer data. You know, so I think regulations in that sense, if they're not coming from the outside world, I think companies are going to be much more careful about, you know, what guardrails they put up about data coming in and out of the organization.
All right. I have a very unrelated question to any of this. Something I've just been thinking about, and I'm curious to take. So over the years, you remember, there's always a discussion of being first to market, right? And there's also discussions around that leads to other kinds of discussion around category creation and so on and so forth. And, you know, one of the hallmarks of, say, category creation is that you have to create the basis for your competitors, right? Which is always a very odd thing to do, but without a competitor, it's not a market, really. I mean, so, right. But the interesting question to me was, I go back in history and you look at Microsoft, for example, and if you remember Netscape and Quattro Pro and WordPerfect and so on and first part, yeah. And I used to be an avid WordPerfect user back in the day, but they were all first to market type. They were first to market. Microsoft was second to market, right? They waited and looked around and they saw all the problems that these had, and they fixed all those problems, and they came second to market and became better. But they didn't have first market advantage, but they dominated by being second to market. So my question to you, and you can modify it any way you like, first to market or second to market?
Oh, I actually think it's easier to be second, third, or fourth to market because the category is created. You can ride the coattails of all the hard work the first mover has done. You know, you can leverage all that intellectual property in terms of like how to go to market, customer use cases. It might be more fun to be first mover because you have to solve all those problems. It's a little more intellectually engaging, but it is hard work, right? I mean, setting up that category, meeting with analysts, convincing them that there's a market there, you know, finding your first customers, who are the right customers. It's a ton of fun, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot easier to be second, third, or fourth in line once that road has been paved.
Absolutely agree with you. I always find it's actually an important question because, you know, right now a lot of companies let's face it, the enterprise technology world is crowded as hell. I mean, it's really crowded. I mean, Oracle, of course, is one of the dominating forces in it, but it's so big a market that you're not the only dominating force. If you think about it, if the market's at a certain level, it's usually, like, for example, pros in the airline travel pricing optimization market, they are like they have like 98 or 99% of it. Literally, that's their market share. I mean, it's like insane, right? But it's not a big market. It's small, right? At the same time, this market's massive. There's 1 million players in it, and trying to like create a brand new category in a market that's already confusing because it's so big isn't always a good play. And to your point, incredibly difficult, wildly expensive. You got to create everything in every aspect that is created by you first.
Yeah, you're convincing people to be guinea pigs in a sense, you know what I mean? Which is great, but also very challenging.
Yeah. So. And the risk is really high that it's just not going to work.
So
period.
You talk to a lot of Oracle customers or CX customers. If you had to take a guess as to like what the fear to excitement ratio is when it comes to all this stuff that we just kind of talked about from your customers, what would it be?
I think the excitement level is probably, in a scale of 1 to 10, probably like a 12.
Wow. Okay.
I think, yeah. I mean, everybody wants to talk about this stuff. Everybody wants to know your opinion, what you're working on, what your vision is for it. But I still don't see a lot of customers actually even approaching what's possible in terms of building out leveraging true AI and ML models within their businesses, just because I don't think people fully have the trust in it yet. Maybe they're worried about those hallucinations and don't be on a wild trip, you know, into some psychedelic place.
That's right.
With their business. But it's definitely a very exciting topic. I mean, everybody's talking about it clearly in every way, shape, or form. But I think customers, you know, that goes back to maybe your first mover question, Paul. I think customers are always in this realm are still working on figuring out what exactly is right for their business.
Yeah, it is scary, actually, especially, I mean, as much as we're talking about generative AI, it's only been a few months, not like it's,
I know.
I mean,
it's
AI
like November, right? Since November.
Right, that's what I'm saying. AI has been around for a long time, but this level of conversation's been literally around a few months, right? And it's way early in the thing. And let's face it, in the beginning, ChatGPT version 3.5, that was people playing with toys.
Yeah.
But now the use case is that, but the thing that, and we discussed this a little yesterday, the thing that was just incredible is the number of use cases that are now out there is just extraordinary. Yeah. And real use cases, not like hallucinations, let's say. They're not hallucinatory.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think I've asked everybody that we've talked to over the last couple of months, you know, vendors at various places. Are you surprised at the speed of conversation that Gen I has kind of cropped up? Because it's not, like I said, this stuff isn't new necessarily. It's been around for a long time, but it seems like ChatGPT did something. It caught the attention of regular folks to the point where it's what everybody's talking about. So were you surprised at how quickly this has moved so far?
I would say I was surprised, like December, January, how fast it was all moving. But now kind of, it's about those use cases, right? I think the reason it's caught on fire so much is because it's so relatable to everyday stuff, right? You can go pay $20 a month and help your kids with like really complex, you know, 12th grade essays on, you know, physics or whatever. Like, I think it's, you know, it's making AI an everyday thing, which I think is why it's kind of latching on so much, because we've consumerified it, right? Like before, AI was such an abstract thing, but now I can explain it at my mother-in-law's, you know, dinner party, and everybody kind of gets it, right? Before ever, it was like this like abstract thing of like machines consuming data, and like it spits out this random information, but like ChatGPT made it consumable. I think that's why it's caught on so much, and people kind of get it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, makes complete sense.
Well, this has been a great conversation. We're at coming up on the top of the hour. We would love to have you back, but we have to ask you one last question because as great as this conversation has been, get this one wrong, we may never talk to you again. So anyway,
no
pressure, but yeah. Do you have a favorite NFL team?
Oh, NFL team. I thought you were going to ask me football. So I was going to say the one with Ted Lasso on it, but that doesn't work anymore because you were very specific. I'm not going to say the Patriots because I know that's dangerous, because I am from Massachusetts and Boston, but I know better than to put Patriots out in front of you guys.
Well,
all right.
So
well,
you say you're
probably I would say the Browns. Yeah, the Browns.
Oh, okay. That's a Rob Pinkerton.
I was about to say you and Rob Pinkerton have clearly
been
talking.
My best friend is from Philadelphia, so that's where we go. So.
Ooh, that would be the Eagles.
Ooh, yeah.
The Eagles, yeah. So
anything's better than the Patriots, so we're not gonna.
Anybody's better than the Patriots.
Let's say if you say the Eagles, Browns gets a complete pass. The Eagles gets well, you survived the question, right?
So we will be glad.
I know better than to say the Patriots.
We will be glad to welcome you back now. I mean,
that's right.
Awesome.
Exactly.
I didn't step into that one, so.
No, clearly you were forewarned. Kim
is always on the job, so she's always right. But Katrina, thanks again for doing
this. Thank you.
Time. It's been a lot of fun and a lot of information too. So, and we will be
All right.
glad to have you back now. So, you know,
Awesome. All right. And Paul, I want to say I love your shirt. I recognize the design.
nice.
Very hallucinatory.
All right. Well, on behalf of Katrina Gosek, I'm Brent Leary. We can't hear you.
Can't
What
hear
happened?
me?
I can hear you, but we can't hear Paul. I can see his lips moving. I think that means he's Paul Greenberg. And we are the CRM Players, and we will see you next week. And Paul will have his mic fixed by then. I bet.
Thanks, guys.